Okay, guys. So welcome everybody to Green Vibes Podcast. So welcome to our new episode today. And here today, we are speaking with Lesley Fox, right, Lesley? So
Hi.
Lesley, she's the executive director of FurBearers. So Lesley, welcome here. Thank you so much for accepting our invite for our conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, Leslie, forbearers, I just want to start you for you to us explain what is this? What is forbearers and what you work in this? Tell me a little bit more about.
Sure. The FurBearers is a registered charity. We were formed in 1953, and our mission is to protect fur-bearing animals through conservation, advocacy, research, and education. And a fur bearer is an animal who is killed for their pelt specifically. So these are a specific group of animals whose fur has value and are often targeted for fashion. And they're traded on an international market. So it makes I believe it's about 21 species or so. And those animals include wolves, coyotes, lynx, bobcat, muskrat, beavers, skunks, squirrels, ermine, bears, a whole host of fur-bearing animals.
Okay. So you said that you have been working for since 53, right? That is
we've been in operation a very long time. We're one of the oldest animal welfare groups in Canada.
Yes, exactly. And what's the difference between when you started there back in 53 and now?
Lots. Huge.
I hope it's a good difference, right? Because
it is.
What we see every year, right? That in so many organizations, different organizations, work a lot, and sometimes the change is so small, right? That it's so sad to see how hard we work, how hard all the organizations work to protect our animals, to protect the environment, everything. And by the end of the year, we look at back and see not too much was changed. We know that even 1% change, it's pretty good, right? We said here because our podcast is just to inspire people and to show people what happened with our environment, what happened with animals, everything. We are not here to change mind, to say, oh, you have to, right? But just to show to people, give knowledge about what happened in our world, about in the environment, right? So, and the change, what happened since back to 53 to now?
It's a great question. And it's a huge question. And there's lots that changed. And right away, my brain wants to sort of categorize that into there's been major political changes, there's technological changes, there's societal changes in attitudes and behaviors.
That's the most important, right? The attitudes and behaviors.
And then there's some organizational changes internally, that we grappled with. So probably the most succinct way to explain it, and I'll highlight a couple big victories on the way. So the 1950s, if we all take a time machine back to the 1950s, animal rights, animal sentience, animal protection wasn't really on the public's radar.
Yes, exactly.
At that time, any of the laws in place, they pretty much didn't exist. At that time, we were using toothed leg hold traps. Those were legal. And the number of animals being killed for their year was, millions of animals. Fur was really popular at that time. We saw it in the movies. It was a symbol of status and affluence.
Yeah, the hunt it was very popular at that time, right?
It was big.
Even in cartoons, we saw in cartoons, they showed people the hunting and they put it on the wall, right? The head of the animals. Yeah.
It was a wild west of just how animals were treated. And so we kind of, left that era, and then we moved into the 70s and 80s are when, in my view, things got really interesting. And we had some really influential people that kind of came out during that time. Certainly Peter Singer and his book Animal Liberation dropped. There was a whole sort of new philosophy is how animals were seen. And we sort of moved away from this sentiment of killing them better to not killing them at all. And it was a brand new concept for for people, you know, and then you had technological advancements, you know, so we've got sort of this evolving public sentiment happening. And then simultaneously technology is making real fur redundant. You know, we've got amazing textiles, and not just fake fur or polyester, but actually really, you know, plant-based fibers, bio fur, you know, recycling different fabrics and techniques. And it's very, very innovative, and it's complex and huge advancements in textiles. So those are, you know, some of the obvious changes. In terms of legislation, the FurBearers has been part of quite a few big landmark victories. You know, one certainly our advocacy around the British Columbia Wildlife Act, you know, so pushing for things like just some restrictions and limitations, you know, bag limits, seasonality, like things to just, you know, try to certainly, if we can't end the elimination of animal killing, certainly how can we restrict it, you know, so sort of playing both sides. At the international level, the FurBearers was part of the agreement on international humane trapping standards. And we advocated against the use of body gripping traps at an international level. And then, of course, moving out of that into our work today, taking on the commercial fur farming industry, and also promoting coexistence with wildlife, which is new to us. That's a very new thing. So looking at animals in our communities, particularly our urban landscapes, animals like, you know, bears, coyotes, cougars, and advocating for sort of still striking this balance of how do we share our land, our neighborhoods, our communities with wildlife, and do that successfully and peacefully. And so those are some of the initiatives we're involved in.
And so about the laws, you said that so many changes happen for sure, but now what is allowed and what is not allowed? And the laws are different for provinces, right? Or it's for entire Canada. Can you explain for me about the laws?
Yeah, laws are complicated. And so trapping and fur farming, so that's basically where fur comes from. So I'll start there. So fur-bearing animals are killed for fashion, and they're either raised on fur farms in like a factory type style setting, or they're trapped in the wild. And there's different kinds of traps that are used to kill animals. Some are restraining traps where they don't kill them outright, but they hold the animal.
But there is it's allowed to do this by the law. The hunters can use this trap.
Yes. Okay. So there's restrictions around it. So trapping is legal in every province and territory. Like hold traps remain legal in every province and territory, although there's specific sizes, types, and styles of traps that have to be used.
That for me doesn't matter, right?
Right. And there's certain, yeah, I agree. And there's certain setbacks of like how and where you can set a trap during what season, targeting which species, these types of things. But I think my mind, I agree with you, immediately goes to what is the tangible benefit for the animal, pretty much negligible. And then the other is enforcement. And as any animal issue ever, enforcement is always one of our biggest challenges, is that you can have the best laws in the world, but if nobody's checking holding people accountable, it all falls through. And enforcement, we just don't have enforcement period. It's woefully lacking. It's underfunded. It's understaffed. And frankly, it's not a priority when it comes to animals, animal law, animal welfare. It's not often a priority. It's really unfortunate.
And even here in Canada, because we have a very diversity kinds of animals, right? That it's easy to find any, as you said, how many species that we can use for fur? I think you said 15 species more.
21.
21 species. See, that's this kind of diversity. I think that it calls more hunter to come to Canada. I was reading a website. It's a very famous website about hunt, and they are specific for hunting tour, right? They do it. And they said that Canada, it's the top number one for hunting, right? They put in the website that, come to Canada, it's top number one for hunting. It's good. It's like a kind of advertisement to come here to kill all animals that's here. Maybe it's because there is no enforcement, right? There is nobody is looking at the laws. That's what really happened, or they are following the laws, right? And now the Canada, it's open seasonal. we saw open season for hunting, and the organization, they goes through this hunting for season or not. You can do something about for this to avoid to get it or to change the laws for hunt.
Yeah, the FurBearers doesn't work on hunting specifically.
Yeah.
We focus on the trapping issue, and hunting is a little bit out of our wheelhouse, and it has very different and separate legislation. Certainly, though, our supporters are also concerned about hunting and hunting practices, poaching, wildlife trafficking, and all those types of things. And I agree with you. I think Canada is very attractive in terms of the number of different species we have in this country. It's a very big country with a lot of variety in terms of habitat and landscapes. And so I think it's very attractive, for hunters around the world and hunting tourism. And there's big money in that. And our government's
exactly,
play
that's
to that.
Big money. Yeah, and you said that's the most popular hunting site in the world. I'm not saying the name here because I don't want to advertise in that. But the first page they put there, Canada, the top #1 for hunting. So, and it shows the page there for bears, for moose, for coyotes, fox, all kinds of animals.
Yeah. And I think the antidote for that really is, how society, like our value that we put on animals is really interesting, where from a hunting perspective, it's this and trapping for that matter, it's this very straight up, monetary value. It's the price of the pelt, or potentially it's, the meat that just comes from these animals. But you talk to a non-user, so someone who's not a hunter, maybe they're a bear viewer, or ecotourism, or, this sector is animals have an intrinsic value. And so there's a straight up economic value associated with hunting. I think that's why it gets a lot of interest from the government, is because, hunting does and can generate money. But I would argue that the opposite is true. Animals are worth more alive than they are dead. And that ecotourism, bear viewing, sustainable operations that value animals and their, again, intrinsic value, they're priceless.
It's all the price. Even this website that I was checking, they put a price there. If you want to go to kill a bear, it's almost $10,000. I said, it's so sorry to say, but it's so stupid. Someone pay $10,000 to kill a bear, right? Put your money in something more useful.
Well, and I think a lot of people agree with you. And the commodification of animals as a resource or as a renewable resource is really controversial. Our government views animals as populations and as a renewable resource, and just how government speaks of animals in that language, they're almost akin to trees or rocks, where it's just this object for our gain. Where I think society is moving now to a place where we're understanding it's a little more comprehensive than that. And animals are not simply populations, they're individuals. And viewing animals as individuals with their own interests, their families, their likes, their dislikes, their personalities. Again, the whole evolution of animal sentience, what we're learning from scientists about how animals think and feel, how they're capable of forming family bonds. It's very complex. And so I think this sort of 1980s school of wildlife management is really starting to get turned on its head. And I think as we move towards Indigenous reconciliation, I think as we move towards embracing, lessons from science, it changes how we perceive animals and our relationship to animals. And we lost that. Colonialism forever disrupted our relationship with animals. Before colonization, there was that connection, this spiritual connection.
Exactly. Because it's easy for me where I live. It's easy to see coyotes or fox in my backyard, right? It's all the time. And they think they put out, stay away for the coyotes, be careful, call animal control. Man, we are in their places, right? My house is in the wrong spot. It's not the animals, it's there, right? I cannot blame the fox, the coyote, that because they are in my backyard, right?
Yeah.
If they are there because there is something they used to be there before me, before my house is there, right? And go ahead.
The word entitlement comes to mind, and I think sometimes we forget that and lose our humility, where we're animals too, and that we're part of this world. We all are. And so there's a real responsibility that comes with carving, a city out of a rainforest. So for example, Vancouver, is arguably a rainforest. And when you go in and build a city out of a rainforest, you can expect wildlife. They live here. It's part and parcel with the land, and that you don't get to sanitize nature. It doesn't work like that. Mm-hmm. So, coexistence is such a big part of our work, and I'm really excited about it. And in the last few years, we've done more and more of it because there's a need. There is just a need. And like you say, in your own community, you're seeing, these wild animals, and you're having these interactions. And for some people, that's a real negative experience. They don't want that interaction. They don't want, animals. And unfortunately, they're here to stay, or I hope they are. Coyotes are fairly resistant. They're very adaptable animals. They're found all across Canada. I agree, though, coyotes can be very brazen at times, and certain individuals, can cause potential conflict. But I don't think, though, that's a green light to eradicate coyotes. I think it just means we need to be smart. We need to understand more about who coyote is. How do we interact in a way, or don't interact, rather, I suppose, like to keep them safe, to keep us safe. And just this appreciation and respect, and giving animals space.
Yeah, once we respect it, and we don't want to treat it like a pet, right? If I see a coyote in my backyard, I'm not putting him inside, even I would like it. But I'm not putting inside home and taking him as my pet, as my dog. No, they had this our environment that he needs to live, but you need to respect this space, right? If they are there.
Yes. And feeding is a big part of that. Wildlife feeding is another issue that's been coming under our radar. And what we're learning, and the scientists that we work with through our advisory board, is feeding. And a lot of people who love animals.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's good or not to feed the wild animals? Tell me. And if a coyote goes to my backyard, can I give something to him?
No. And it's a really hard thing to talk about, because it does seem like the right thing to do, doesn't it? And just when you think of food generally, like in most cultures, food is a main way in which people show affection, which you give and receive love. You take care of someone. If someone is sick, you bring them food. If there's a celebration, you have food. If someone's birthday, there's food.
Even dogs, right? Everything. We teach dogs to give ball, to sit, to roll off with food.
Food is associated with.
We give food to him for him to do this.
That's right. And food is associated, with care. And so I understand emotionally and mentally that, of course, like in our hearts, it feels like the right thing to want to give a coyote, some food. And coyotes can look skinny and hungry, and they're begging, and right. And that makes it worse. When they go to our backyard sometimes,
it's so skinny, poor coyote.
I know.
They just have tails, a big tail. The rest is all skinny.
And then what happens, though, is just like our dog at home, is the food now changes behavior. And so when you offer something to, for example, coyote, you feed a coyote what might seem like a benign interaction, and it was fun. Sometimes people take a photo or a video and put it on social media, and it's a bit of a joke or a fun thing to do. But unfortunately, what happens is that animal, they start to lose their wild instincts that keep them safe, and they associate food now with people. And they become more brave and brazen, and they start to approach people. Sometimes they get aggressive because they're frustrated, because, sometimes they might get a food reward. Sometimes they might not, depending on who they approach. Yeah. And there's some evidence that, for example, animals will cross busy highways if they think they're getting a food reward on the other side. And so it changes their behavior in ways that just puts them at risk. Also, issues related to nutrition, malnutrition, disease transfer, those are all associated with wildlife feeding as well. And so our message, really with wild animals, they're very different than other animals. Wild animals require, it's almost like sovereignty, like they're their own entity, and they need to keep that distance in that space. And their wildness is absolutely everything. So the best thing that we can do for wildlife is to leave them alone. They don't require intervention. They don't need us.
They don't need, exactly.
They don't, and in the very rare event that they do need us. So for example, if a wild animal is orphaned or injured, then the appropriate response is to call a qualified wildlife rehabilitator. And they're located across Canada, and people can contact a wildlife rehabber for advice or instructions on, taking the next step if an animal truly requires intervention. But for the most part, wildlife, like I said, the best thing we can do is leave them alone.
Yeah, but we always say, because in our backyard, we always see, and during the night, not during the day for sure, but during the night we saw, it's easy to see some different kind of wild animals. And what we do there, it's always the grass. It's cut and clean. That's it. We never call any company to throw any poison to kill any kind of animals there, because sometimes we saw mice there at my backyard. There is animals that goes there and eats these mice, right? Even we have skunk, we have the possums, we have the rabbits. That is animal. That is food. Let's see.
Sounds like a wonderful place to live.
Yeah, exactly. No, even our neighbors, they look at it and said, "Oh, what do you have there?" I said, "I just have it clean. My backyard, it's clean, and the grass, it's always cut. That's it, right? I never put anything there. Never put any trap, any poison, nothing." I said, "That leave it for the environment. They do our job. They do their job there. They clean my backyard. They eat all the animals. They live there. I live it. What can I do with them?" Right? And as you said, we never give any food for the wildlife. Even they go there. Even look, sometimes you said we see that, it's hungry. They're starving.
It's hard. It is. And
we look at there, we have some carrots or bananas, some fruits like that. Oh, just one. No, we don't do that. Right, Erica? No, we don't do that. Yeah, it's exactly. So another question here. Recently, your organization sent a complaint to BC Minister of Environment and Climate Change about numerous killings of bears cubs, right? I heard that. It's so sad. What happened with this?
Yeah, that's a contentious issue.
Yeah, tell me about that. How they can kill the bear cubs? Why? What? First, why they do this? What the reason to kill the bear cubs?
I think that's what we're trying to find out. I think that's at the root of it, is why.
Why?
It's our opinion that it's unnecessary and that there's alternatives. There's people who have the ability to restore an animal's health. We have 3 facilities in British Columbia that rehab orphan bear cubs. So there are alternatives, but for whatever reason, that we have an agency within our government that again doesn't value individuals. They don't see it the way,
because the government allowed it to do this, right?
Yes. And so the legislative structure in British Columbia, there, as it relates to wildlife, there's 2 sort of specific agencies. So there's the BC Ministry of Forest Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development. It's a mouthful. Sometimes people just call them FLNRO, Forest Lands, Natural Resource Operations. So that's one ministry. They make the rules. Okay. They are wildlife managers, and they make the rules. They make the trapping rules. They make, the decisions on how wildlife are to be used. Another agency is called the BC Conservation Officer Service. They are a policing agency, not wildlife managers, a policing agency under the Ministry of Environment. So there's these 2 organizations. So one makes the rules and one enforces the rules.
Okay.
But the problem, though, is the line gets blurred, and you have what is a policing agency responding to what is essentially a wildlife management problem. And the people who should be responding to the wildlife management problem sit behind their desk in Victoria and aren't providing any practical help. And so where this ends up going is you essentially have unqualified individuals who have no experience, with biology. They're not veterinarians. They went to a police academy. They're not trained in animal welfare, and they have opinions. They make observations. when they come across these animals. So for example, that bear cub is too skinny. And then for the reason, then an officer would kill that bear cub. It's our view that if a bear cub is too skinny, okay, so let's get the bear some proper nutrition and into care with a facility who has the experience to deal with this. It doesn't necessarily warrant a bullet. And I think it's our concern that we essentially have what is a trigger happy organization overstepping its authority and having these negative interactions with our wildlife. And again, it really warranted a complaint where it looks like there is a systemic problem in how, particularly in this case, orphan bear cubs are managed. And there needs to be a plan. There needs to be people who are properly trained and qualified. It needs to be properly funded where animals can get where they need to go and facilities have the resources necessary to care for these animals. It requires a plan, not a police response. It's completely a giant waste of resources, if nothing else. So the BC Conservation Officer Service, while the word conservation is in their title, it's a bit of a misnomer and misleading in that their job is enforcing legislation. They are not wildlife managers. They are for special provincial constables. They have a badge and a gun, and they have all the permissions of the RCMP. They're cops. They are cops. So it's wildly inappropriate for them to be involved in dealing with animals when there is no policing action required. Is there an offense? Is there an emergency? Is someone in a lot of trouble? Is there property damage? Those would be circumstances where it's appropriate to involve a conservation service.
We have two. There is two departments. A lot of people's involved. A lot of jobs involved there for the decision to kill.
Yeah. So
what's the last decision, right? What's the decision? What they do it? They both. Everybody, so many people's involved, government, laws, everything. By the end, they said, okay, just killed the cubs, that's it. We don't need this. If that's the decision, right? That's the last decision.
It is, and it's very frustrating. And part of it too is, unlike other policing agencies, the BC Conservation Officer Service has no oversight. So there's nobody, checking files or reviewing anything with an independent lens. And you have that in other policing agencies, and you should have that because it involves firearms. So whether it's people or animals, it's our view that any time a gun is discharged, someone should be paying attention to why. And there should be, and that makes sense because that's reasonable, isn't it? It's a test of reasonableness. Someone who's using their gun on a fairly regular basis, there needs to be a good reason for that. It's not enough to say I have a badge and a gun and I can do what I want. Wrong.
Exactly.
An officer has discretion, but there needs to be rules and limits on that discretion, and it needs to be a reasonable use of force. And so what happens when it's only animals, and I think that's kind of what we have is we have a government that doesn't value individual animals. And so this type of behavior, people frankly get away with it. Where really, I think if you look at it from a use of force perspective, through a policing model, is it appropriate that there are seemingly no restrictions on their authority to kill? Like that doesn't make any sense to me. And so that's all part of our complaint is certainly bringing it to their attention. One, this isn't going to be tolerated. Two, there's a major systemic issue with how bear cubs are treated. Three, we need a plan.
Exactly.
It's not reasonable to be killing these animals when many times they're not involved in any public safety issue. They're not particularly suffering or in critical distress. They may have some nutritional problems or potentially some small ailment. But again, I think the idea is that, well, great, send them to somebody who's in a position to help them.
As you said, leaving them alone, right? They can take it down by themselves. Did you get any response for the government so far?
Not yet. So
Not yet?
so it'll probably be a few weeks before we hear from them, but we're very committed to this file and we are looking for significant change. So it's not going to be enough for them to respond with a so sad, too bad, thanks so much.
Mm-hmm.
What we're really looking for is an overhaul. These systems need to be overhauled, and it's all very important because it relates to things like credibility and public trust, taxpayer money, use of force. It's not just about animals and animal welfare. It's a very complicated issue that involves all these big things. And so we really hope that they see the big picture. And if they don't value animals, I really do hope they see, for their own reputation, if nothing else, this issue deserves attention.
For this specific case, is there anything that the regular population can do?
Yes. And so with any wildlife issue ever, it's always about the provincial, your elected official, right? So in British Columbia, it's the MLAs, the Member of Legislative Assembly. So people can support us here in BC. They can contact their MLA and just say, I'm very concerned with, the treatment of bear cubs. I really want there, to be, a plan or alternatives provided to situations where, cubs are at risk. And in Ontario, people can contact their MPP as well. So every province has an enforcement agency. In Ontario, it's the Ministry of Natural Resources. Alberta, it's Fish and Wildlife. But across Canada, there are these sort of policing agencies that manage wildlife. And they're really worth looking into. And I think the more people dig, the more concerns you'll uncover. But it is something we can do something about.
Yeah, I hear in Ontario, I think that's the MP Nathaniel, that they put the bill, I think a couple of months ago, right? About FurBearers, right? For farms. In BC, it's the same thing. They can do it in BC, or is it just in Ontario? Do you know about
a fur farm?
Yeah, the fur farm. That's the MEP Nathaniel. He put to ban all the fur farms here in Canada.
Yeah, so there's a few different initiatives happening. So in British Columbia, last year there was an announcement by Ministry of Agriculture to end mink farming in BC. So not fur farming.
Yeah, there's a mink farm there. Yeah.
Mink specifically, which really is the bulk of our industry here anyways. There's one chinchilla farm, but the other farms are all mink. And so it's effectively really wiped out that industry. There is a lawsuit right now. The mink farmers are suing the government, claiming that they're, among other things, the government didn't have the authority or jurisdiction to put in a full ban. So, this needs to be tested in court still. We remain fairly optimistic about that. And then in Ontario, Liberal MP Nathaniel Erickson Smith put forward a private member's bill that would effectively, if passed, ban fur farming in Canada more broadly. So, I think it's a great time to be having these discussions about fur farms and whether or not they're appropriate for a civilized society. Or what are the social or economic benefits of fur farming?
I saw for the past years, they reduce a lot, right? The quantity of fur farms. They reduce a lot. So
you're right. Yes, the industry is in a lot of trouble, and COVID has not been kind to the fur industry whatsoever. And they've really suffered as it relates to trade. COVID has ripped through mink farms in Europe, United States, Canada as well. And just, I think, to their own detriment. Again, it's this forever moving society, and furriers are getting left behind. And I sort of equated in my brain to rotary phones. Do you remember the phones where you dial and you have to move the number?
Yeah, I remember. I was that age.
CDs, or DVDs. We'd go to the video store and you'd rent a DVD and then come home and you put all of these things that, we've grown up with and let go of because they were simply replaced by other things in other industries. And it moves all the time. And fur is just in that category where it's becoming more and more obsolete.
Yeah, and I see that also for the past years, the quantity of cosmetics, vegan and cruelty-free, it comes a lot, right? I work in a retail, and I see there every month some new brands are coming, and with all the cosmetics, right? And all vegans and cruelty-free. So even big companies, they are not say change, right? But they have one field with vegan and cruelty-free also. So more peoples are getting access of this kind of product.
Huge. And that extends to the fur issue as well. There's a lot of companies that announce they're not using fur, or they make a fur-free commitment. Canada Goose, most notably, they were one of the last holdouts where they have the big fancy parka coats and they use exclusively coyote fur on the hoods. Yeah. And, they made an announcement that they were moving away from real fur. A lot of the major brands and fashion houses, and again, it makes good business sense where businesses want to be competitive and they want to attract customers, and they want to be perceived as being caring and compassionate. And, good businesses have a sustainability plan and have values that align with sustainability. And again, that's just good practice. And so I'm very excited to kind of see the evolution now of sort of the corporate mindset.
And it's a quality product. It's not product that you say that it's a garbage, it's not good, but no, it's a quality product with very good quality that we have the options, even foods, right? But when we decide to be vegan, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe it's a little bit hard to find some more places or more options for vegan foods. And now it's easy. Even if you go to big groceries, you can find not a big space there with 4 feet, 8 feet of shelves there that we can find for vegan food, but we can, right? Many different grocery store we can find. So it's easy for people that can get more access of this kind of thing. That's pretty good. Okay, so for your organization, what's the achievement for this year? What's your plans?
Oh my gosh, this year's busy already. So we're involved.
We are in the middle. It's a lot of work, right?
It's a lot of work.
I know.
And I'm very lucky because I work with a brilliant team of people, and Michael Howie, Sydney Schaffner, Aaron Hoffman, Marcy Potter. There's a small group of us along with a volunteer board of directors, and I feel like we get a lot done. So this year, right off the top of my head, I think lawsuits. So we've got our finger in a few different pies. We filed a judicial review in Ontario over a coyote killing contest. That'll probably be heard this winter. We are seeking intervener status as it relates to the mink fur farming case here in BC. We have an active case regarding the chinchilla farm in BC, where we're alleging noncompliance as it relates to the Animal Health Act. And we are also working on a few different trapping reform measures at the policy level. So in addition to that, we've got our work related to the BC Conservation Officer Service reform. And then lumped in there are a whole bunch of educational initiatives. So we're working with the University of British Columbia on a few different projects. One of them related to the coexisting with black bears in British Columbia, which is really neat. So looking at the impacts of tourism and what people can do to help protect bears and to help manage trapnids. We have a door hanger program that we're really proud of, where volunteers go door to door and distribute information about different species in targeted neighborhoods. Should an incident arise, we're there to act immediately and, again, get people timely, important information to remind them to manage attractants. And then we have a scholarship program.
Oh, that's the point there. I would to ask you. I put it here to ask
I'm so proud
about
of that.
Children's. What do you?
It's something we really like to build on. I think it was a new initiative that was launched last year. And the idea is that to fix problems, we need solutions. And we have to invest in those solutions. They need to be there because they need to be real so we can get rid of the problems. And part is investing in scientists. There's people who really care and are working on solutions, that can replace killing, that can replace trapping, that can replace hunting. And they need funding, because, master's and PhD programs are really expensive, and pilot programs and studies, trail cams, travel costs, mapping, like these are drones, like these are all things that are very expensive and require funding. And so we want to help researchers. And also the arts. I'm such a big believer in, I really believe to get to this solution, it requires all of us. It's not enough just to be an animal welfare advocate. Mm-hmm. We need to be working with veterinarians, medical professionals, First Nations, art. Like you have to pull in all the
professionals involved in this.
Yeah, and art is brilliant because art is a way that you can reach people in a different way and still talk about all these same issues. It's creative and it's fun, and I'm really interested in bringing in the arts to help tell the animal's story, to help talk about coexistence, to help talk about fur farming and all these issues. And it's just another medium and another way to do that. So it's all that diversity that really excites me, because I see that that's just how you reach people. Some people, unfortunately, animals are just not enough. So you need to be able to speak to the other interests, their business sense, or their, from a health perspective, or like First Nations. That's really important, so bringing in all this stuff to kind of round out a message, that makes me excited.
Yeah, even with the children like that, because before the COVID we start a project here, me and my wife, with SK grade 1 in the public schools. We did a puppet show, right? And it shows talking about animals, everything. So it was fun because there is one class that the teacher said, "Oh, this class is crazy. The kids don't stop it. They just talk. They don't pay attention. We always I need to ask him to stop it." They said, "Oh, it's zip our month." I said, "That's crazy. You're going to be very trouble." I said, "No, let's go. Let's see." So when we did the puppet show, it was fun. Everybody was sitting. All the children sit and pay attention about the presentation that he was doing. And it was very simple. Just we put a table here. We hide behind the table, right? And with the hands, we did the puppet show. Nothing professional, nothing, just to show the kids about and we talk one history about animals with dogs and like that. And it was interesting because all the children show interest about this and they like it. After that, for the next day, right, the teacher came because my daughter studies there, but she's another grade. And the teachers come to us and said, "Oh, where's the next puppet show?" Because the kids love it. They are asking me about puppet shows. But our intention is to continue this, but right after 2 to 3 months, the COVID started, was back in 2020. Yeah, we had to stop everything, and since now. But we strongly agree that the children's, if we start to teach them, right, to love animals, to take care of animals, to respect animals, they are going to bring this home, right? I think kids can bring this home and talk with parents, with grandparents, with friends, with all adults. Because sometimes to change the mind for adults is hard, right? Because our mind is always busy, money, work, pay bills.
And sometimes it's traditional cultures and the adults, it's hard to change.
Yeah, but Canada, it's a different cultures, right? We have people for different countries and sometimes they think different with Canada, let's say about Canada. So,
but kids looking for the new experience. In many cases, don't have experience with the animals, any animals. Have some friends of my daughter that tell me sometimes my daughter is lucky because she know almost everything about the animals and the environment. Because all the time you are visiting so many sanctuaries and parks and in many places.
Yeah, almost every week you go to different sanctuaries and shows the animals there that you need to take care. My daughter is 11.
And
perfect.
Yeah.
And I think that it will be great starting with teach the kids. I am very proud of your project. I think that is very excellent with the work with kids. And I think that about the kids, we have hope for a better future. Because with adults, I can see this.
Yeah, it's hard. For adults, sometimes it's hard to change mind. As I said, it's a busy world.
It is.
Right.
And that's that. Yeah. And that's why I think having all that diversity is really important when, for adults, a lot of it is just the business case. It's money,
exactly.
And fine. If that's what their interests are, then I'm happy to speak to that interest. So for example, at the start of the show, we were talking about the value of animals and hunting, and so when you can explain to an adult, well, animals are worth a lot more alive, and this is why, and ecotourism, and, and again, you can make the business case for doing the right thing.
Exactly. Use your business for good thing.
There is a business case for doing the right thing. And just like companies, for a company to have strong values, to take a position on an issue, to be committed to sustainability, that's a nicety, but that's also good business sense. You attract, new customers. It's great for marketing, and so, yeah, I agree. I think it's really important to connect with kids and help preserve the love they have for animals. And it's innate. They're all born with it.
Yeah.
Kids love animals generally. It's just that as they get older, it gets sucked out of them.
Yeah, maybe no patience, right? But
yeah, but most kids are born to love animals, and given the opportunity, they can and will do the right thing because they just wear their heart on their sleeves. They're honest, and they don't know corruption. They don't know greed. They don't know money.
Exactly.
And so they see suffering and they want it to stop. Awesome. In its most simplistic terms. And that's how we all should be. If you see suffering, you make it stop. You fix it. There's no reason for that. But as adults, we turn a blind eye or we allow it because of competing interests, because of money, because of corporate greed, because of politics, or because we're too tired or don't feel like it or entitled or whatever else is going on.
Or sometimes the people's just thinking status. And I am rich, I am famous, I am using this brand because this brand is the right brand. I don't care about you happy beside the brand.
They buy a purse.
I use the brand.
They buy a purse or something like that. It's a big brand, $10,000 a purse.
It is, the value system so out of whack sometimes, and
so useless.
I
think it's bad for animals in the environment, but the people don't care.
Yeah,
they are not. Our society today is very selfish and greediness. All the time, the people only thinking about themselves.
Yeah,
another people, another animals, and the environment. Sometimes the people don't thinking in the next generations. So neither in their kids, their grandkids, and what's happened?
Nothing.
It's hard. We work with these kids, these adults, is the society. But if you work with the kids, you can see the difference because the kids and in small kids, for example, if you give for the kids a big price or a small price. For their kids, it's the same. They don't care about the values, how money this.
Yeah, if you give the pen or a gold pen, it's a pen.
Right. It's just the recognition that they like. They just want to be seen and noticed, and it doesn't matter about the value. That the item holds. It's the point that you would recognize their effort, and they get excited when you just recognize their effort.
Like animal, right? Animal doesn't care if you live on the street or if you live in a mansion. No. As long as you are together with him, the dog. As long as you give it food. And play with the dog, that's it. They don't care about your status.
And with animals is like the same. You respect them, they respect you. That's it.
Yeah, I agree.
It's so hard that people understand this. I don't know.
We certainly live in challenging times. And I think one of our biggest obstacles is animal welfare advocates is there's so many things right now that need attention, isn't there? And I love animals. I work on animals, but probably like you, I care about lots of other things too. I care about the environment. I care about homelessness and poverty. I care about the opioid crisis. I care about, what's happening in Ukraine. Like there's a million things.
As long as the environment is involved, right?
Yeah, like the climate crisis. Like there's so many issues right now that I care deeply about, and the commonality they all have is oppression, and whether it's people, animals, or the environment, this oppressive power structure at the top that just, forces it all down. And it makes it difficult, though, when you have all these issues, it makes it very difficult to advocate for animals because you just can't get up to the light, because there's so many other things that are literally on fire, that politicians are trying to deal with. It's just never a priority. And so it takes an enormous amount of persistence. And luckily I have a lot of that, but that's really what we need, though, is that persistence where no matter what, like you just got to, you gotta fight. You gotta make phone calls. You need meetings. You need,
And we need to bring the peoples for the incentive these peoples working in each one in your community, because you need more people bringing knowledges and awareness about the animals and anything that's happening. Many general peoples, if you ask something, they don't know.
Yeah,
they don't know. I understand. We have so many organizations, so many people working hard behind everything, but even so, have a percentage for the society that don't never. Here before
more than a half of people, they don't actually, they knows, right? But some people, they just pretend that they don't know. Money it's involved. When you go to the government to change some laws, to change something, they gonna think how much is gonna impact this, right? I think that's the first question that the government say. It's how much, and not just how. It's how much. So that's hard to start when people just thinking in money, right? Just thinking how much what happened.
It's like the mink farms. Many years ago, have the scientists that bring about the pandemic that is coming for the population, and nobody listen. When it started the pandemic, I started the search about the COVID and the for mix farming, for farms, and it's out there. The scientists all the time show for the peoples, and no one cares. The government is the same, because if the animals is suffering, it can bring diseases. Why is still there?
Yeah, because we
sense.
See that's what it happened, but it don't stop it, right?
What make me so sad is if some women but my eyelash. Oh my goodness, you kill an animal only for the eyelash.
Yeah,
it don't make sense. I live 20 years ago. I was younger. I never use eyelashes. And if I kill an animal, oh my goodness, I have a heart attack because this.
As long as they are good, right? They look pretty. They look good.
I know everyone. Okay,
it's hard.
But see, it's hard to think about the things that our society they are making today, because it don't make sense. They don't think nothing. Behind every organization, every animal suffering, people, you can see everything have always someone suffering behind the things, and the people don't care.
And so it's super important.
You need more peoples. I know that the activists, that the organization is small numbers about the world population, but you need now much good peoples working together as you can.
I agree.
Yeah.
I know that
And
heavy peoples
yeah.
in BC, in Winnipeg, in Ottawa, in Quebec, but
Mhm.
everyone needs to work to show the people that we are making wrong.
Yeah.
I think working together is key. And that I think has probably been, and especially throughout our work on the mink issue these last few years, with COVID. And, and the COVID connection was really big because it really was this reminder, COVID just generally, and the origins of COVID, it came from a wildlife market. COVID was a result of our relationship with animals, how animals, kept in horrible conditions. And no wonder, we get some of the diseases that we have, and these zoonotic diseases where animals get sick, make us sick, and then we make the animals sick. And this virus goes back and forth the whole time and mutates. And so what it says, though, at its very core is animal issues are human issues.
Yes.
It's interconnected. And I think historically we separate animals. Those are animals. These are people. People are better than animals. And this is, we work in silos. You can't do that anymore. I think the world demands, that you approach things, I think, with this interdisciplinary, lens of, it's all the same. Animal health is human health. It relates to our environment. It really, it's all interconnected. And so working together becomes essential, like for being able to tackle these issues. And certainly for us, we're not health experts, but we work with health experts, right? And so we can use our platform and our social media and our newsletters to amplify their voice. And they're the experts. Let them be the experts. I don't need to know everything about COVID and COVID health. I know where to go to get that, and vice versa. So we can provide that service, as animal advocates, we can help inform their work from an animal perspective. And when we're sharing information that way and using each other's platform and resources to amplify our voices, we reach so many more people. And it's very important.
Another problem that we have in these days is because sometimes the people, but my grandmother used the fur coat. Okay, but it's your grandmother. Today you use cell phone. Your grandmother don't use cell phone. And the people don't connect the things. Okay, they're in rock wages.
Yeah.
You eat meat, you hunt the animal for you stay warm, but today you don't need to do this.
No, and
things change.
And the industry has really been hurt by that. The idea of grandma's head to toe mink coat, you don't see that much anymore. Most of fur these days is just bits and pieces and trim and, pom-poms and like you mentioned, eyelash extensions, cell phone cases. It's all little tiny, and it's the only way they can stay in business is they got to cut it up and dye it purple. And, you can find fur in the dollar store. It's not the way that it was. It no longer has this status associated with it. In fact, it's gone the opposite, where people in many ways perceive it to be cheap and tacky. That it really has lost its relevancy. It's no longer relevant in a modern society. It's replaceable, and it should be.
Yeah, I think that's why it's important to start we teach our childrens, right, about the right thing. Maybe at the future they think different, or they can try to do something to change what's being done so far, right?
Yeah, it's so right about kids, and as adults, I don't know why we lose that, but kids, they're just so honest and so blunt sometimes.
Exactly.
Like, if you really want an honest opinion, ask a child and they'll tell you. And they'll be the first to let you know, what you look, how you look, or they're very honest, and they wear their hearts on their sleeve, and it, I just, and as a child, I was the same way. I loved animals, and I held on to that, luckily. And as an adult, that served me. But some kids, I think, need to be taught,
Yeah.
I don't know that, maybe it's inherent for all, but yeah, I think that's our task, isn't it? Is to just go back to what we know, go back to basic and lead with our hearts. And for some reason it's perceived as a weakness or somehow not professional, or when you're an adult, you don't talk about hearts. You talk about how we're going to make money, like go to work,
exactly.
get a house. Like,
that's what happens.
Yeah. When you talk about your heart and emotions, it's almost this perception that you're a lesser person or you're not tough enough to survive the real world.
So maybe you need to be a bad guy, right? To be to be accepted in the society. You need to be a bad guy. You need to be that guy, that strong guy. So
yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's something to be said. Yeah, go back to that about But the gender thing is very real, like you just said. Men in particular, like it's even worse. Where God forbid you show any feelings or emotion, because it's just. Those are the gender roles. What is a man? A man is strong, he's independent, he's the provider. What are women? Well, we're emotional, but then we're not taken seriously because we're over emotional.
Exactly.
Nobody wins, and I don't know. To care for animals is just to be human, and we're animals too.
Perfect. Okay. So do you have any other question for her?
No,
anything that you want to?
How the people can help you, the organization?
That's great. Well, we're a charitable organization, and donations are always welcome and appreciated. And we are charitable, so donors can get a tax receipt. So if people want to learn more and make a donation, they can go to our website. It's thefurbearers.com.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna put the website there on the edition for sure. Okay.
Well, it was so nice to spend time with you, and
it was
thank
awesome.
you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome, Lesley. Thank you so much. You are doing a great job, amazing job with your organization. Keep it going. And if you need anything for us, just reach out. Whatever we can help you, for sure, we are here to help you. It was great to talk with you.
And thank you for all the work you're doing. I mean, it's so important raising all these issues and putting ourselves out there. And it's a lot of work to organize and set up interviews and prepare questions. And so you're doing great work too. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And thanks everybody for watching this episode, and see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Les. Thank you.
Bye, Les. Thank you.